Hello folks and welcome. This subject is about ending collections agencies, and I'm going to show you how to do that for yourselves step by step. Now I will be methodical and clear as possible, and I have taught thousands of people directly and indirectly as to how to stop these collection agencies from entering your life and making you poor. If you folks out there can understand what I'm going to show you, then you will get your lives back. You will be able to get those cars that you need, those houses that you want, and to get that security that you need in your life financially. Now, this subject is very personal to me. I've experienced a lot of people, including me, that have gone through these processes, and I only show first-hand knowledge. And I've also known people that have almost been driven to suicide over these subject matters. Now, I also want to make it very clear, the collections agencies do not give a damn about you or your welfare or your abilities or anything like that. The collection agencies are actually performing in fraud. And that's one of the subjects that I'll be speaking about. If you are going to be involving yourself in some sort of collection agency, already are, just under the UN laws, you are already breaking the law, a subject matter which I'm going to cover in depth with you. I'll show you one of the first things that you must know, which the average person is not familiar with. First of all, it all starts with some sort of a credit card or some sort of a loan. As a result, that account has been passed on without your permission, so that's breaking the law, without your permission to some sort of agency, usually a collection agency. Now, first of all, that element, what I said, you have to completely understand and pay full attention to it. In order for any company, it doesn't matter who it is, it can be a government, it can be a loan company, a credit card company, first of all requires your permission to actually hand the account over to anybody else. So if you are having challenges with a credit card company or a loan company or a mortgage company, they can't pass it on unless they got your permission, okay? So the company that have actually taken on the new account, as it were, will write to you. And this is the bit that most average people do not know. So for example, you might have a letter come through your letterbox like this, and it will have number 1. I don't know if you're able to see that. You should be able to. And that number next to the postage stamp, what they're doing is they're counting how many times they have communicated to you. After the third attempt, it can now go into court. But I'm going to teach you how to stop that before that happens. So that is one element of it, okay? And you guys understand what I'm saying. That's one now. On the same letter, what you will also see is words like this. It will say, and I'll read it out, private and confidential, to be opened by addressee only. So what they're saying is that you are only supposed to open this letter if that letter belongs to you. That means they have to get the name correctly and they have to get the address correctly. If they make any mistakes, then of course you are in possession of some sort of a fraud taking place. Now there's quite a lot of information that I'm giving, but I want to give as much as I can so you guys can do this yourself, or I can teach you on my webinars. Now that you have understood what the face of the letter looks like, now let's go on to the contents a little bit more. When the loan company or credit card company has decided to pass your details on because either you've missed a payment or you are unable to pay the full amount or what's called a principal, they of course, under their own regulations, have the ability to pass that on to somebody else. That new company that has picked up that account now requires your permission to be able to carry on with that account. So when you open the letter, what will happen is that you read between the lines and you think that they are writing to you as if they've got some sort of jurisdiction, as if they've got the right to claim something from you. But it's actually a trick. What they're essentially doing in that letter is trying to get you to write to them or to phone them. And when you phone them and they will record the conversation, what will happen is that you are now making verbal contract with this alphabet collection agency. And because you are innocent as to how contracts work, they now got you on record admitting to something. So as a result, they have now firmly made contract with you. That means they've got your mitigation, your agreement. The other way is that they will ask you to write to them to say how you're going to pay this off. But it's the letter itself is only an offer to handle your account. But because the manner in which the letter is written, you assume that it's actually they have some sort of lawful claim over your account. But in reality, what they're doing is trying to get your permission to handle that account. So I will repeat that again. And I know it's a scary subject. They are actually only making you an offer to handle that account, which actually belongs to some other credit card agency of whom you never gave permission to pass the accounts on. Now, the way that these alphabet collecting agencies work is that they pick these things up on the open market, as it were, and say you owe somebody £10,000 in principal or 10,000 euros or $10,000, and this is global, by the way. This is not restricted to the UK, America, or anything like that. It is global. What I'm teaching you is global, and I do this on a global scale. When they pick up that letter, as it were, of the credit card company, they only pay a few cents on the dollar or on the pound or the euro. And under the UN own laws, that company is only allowed to ask you for the value of what they paid for it. Full stop. So you have to learn how to fight this, how to overturn this. If you don't, you are essentially damned. Why? If you did contract with them and you started paying off what they're asking for, does that reflect on your credit history? No, it doesn't. So check if it's actually beneficial for you to do that. Now, on the letters, they will put it in poetic terms that this may be reflected in your credit history. Well, it's going to be reflected in your credit history if you miss a gas payment or electricity payment. So it's well worth your while actually fighting these things, because if you don't fight it, the consequences to you will be your interest rates on other cards will go up because it will be reflected, and other credit card agencies and other credit card companies will be shy to lend you money, as it were. And even if you did pay it off, what they're asking for, that contract can always remain open, because they can come back and say, well, you now owe us interest on the principal. So I want to make it very clear to you folks, if you are paying these people just under the UN laws, you are actually breaking the law. So that is something that you need to take into consideration and something that you can use as leverage against them. So I'll try to give you a little bit more information as to how you can start to question them. So if you did decide to write back to them, and you can't ignore it, by the way. Now, the reason why you can't ignore that letter is because if you look at the name in the letter will appear exactly how you opened the account to begin with a credit card agency or a mortgage company or a loan company. So essentially they're writing to you with the same account name as it appears in the original agreement that you had with the loan company or credit card agency. Full stop. Now, one of the things that you can do for yourselves is, just like the barristers, begin to ask simple questions of these people. Do not admit to anything, because you have nothing to admit to. Your contract is not with this alphabet company. It's not with this alphabet collection agency. It's with somebody else. So ask them simple questions like the barristers do. They say, "Is it true, Mr. John, that you have to tell me what language you're writing to me? Is it true, if I was a Chinese person, that you would have to write to me in Chinese because that's my mother tongue and father tongue? That's what I'm mostly fluent in." So what I'm saying to you is that you can even ask them to write to you in any language that you want. That includes Braille. That includes what it is. So you can understand what it is that they're asking you about. So if you do write to them, and I suggest you write to them, because if you phone them, what will happen is that they will say, "Is this Mr. John Smith?" as it appears on the letter. And if you say yes, you have now contracted to that name that applies to that letter. And then they will say, "Oh, what's the reference number or account number so we can find you?" And then when you give them the account number or reference number, you've now second time accepted that they have a contract with you. So that's 2 times that you have accepted the contract. And when you begin to read between the lines, and they will say, "Well, how do you want to pay it off?" And you say, "Well, that's what I want to discuss with you." You're now, for the 3rd time, making it very clear to them that you owe them some money, as opposed to the original person that you have a contract with. So these are the things that you need to know. And when you do write back to them, send it by registered post, and write the registered post number that you're sending them to inside the letter as your own reference. So you can start the process off and keep that serial number going from A to B until the case is finished. So to recap as best I can, think of the alphabet collection agency as nothing more than an interloper into your affairs that essentially has got nothing to do with them. They are interlopers, and they are acting as interlopers, and this is the word that you need to know. Another way to really see into their trickery, as it were, is for you to start learning to read all letters. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's from governments or it's just a gas bill or electricity bill. Always read your letters from bottom to top. So I'll say that again. Always read from the bottom to top. When you read from the bottom, you might see small print. When you see small print, well, that's the Disability Act. You can't use small print in contracts because that's disabling you. If the letter doesn't have an autograph on it, then of course the letter carries no authorization. So when the police stop you, they always ask you to sign something, don't they? That's because you are authorizing them to act on your behalf. So if the letter inside does not have an authorship on it, it doesn't have a signature on it or an autograph, then it's powerless. It's just a piece of advertising. When you are on the phone, well, that's called a verbal contract. And when you're writing back to them in a mitigating way, as if to say that you are admitting something, that's called a written contract. So to avoid all of these sort of things, just put it on paper, send it to them, and make it a written questionnaire where they have to fill out. You can ask them for their qualifications. You can ask them for their insurance numbers. Ask them, is this a trust relationship? Are you the beneficiary? Who's the beneficiary here? Who's the executive? I know these are all new words, but I want you to do a little bit of research, because the topic of this video is about ending them, ending the collection agencies, and the interlopers into your lives. If you have a chance to talk to the original person that you had a contract with, it's well worthwhile. Even if you pay them €1, $1 per month, as it were, you are still offering them contract. You are still offering them to pay it back. Interest, of course, is always negotiable. It's a negotiable interest. So you can pay the principal back from the original lender, which they have now sold on, as it were, because the original lender, the original person that you had a contract with, has completely and utterly washed their hands. This interloper requires your permission to pick up that account. So I'm going to repeat that again. Because the original contract that you have with that credit card company, loan company, or mortgage company is with them and nobody else, the interloper requires your permission to pick up that account name, to pick up that account number, to pick up that letter, presuming and assuming that they have told you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That is something that I also teach on the webinars, because all contracts have to be open. So, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you have benefited from this video and you can see you have a lot of power. So let me recap. 1. When you get the letter, understand what private and confidential is. Private and confidential means it's a contract between two people, okay, and it's non-public. Some registered companies are actually private limited companies or private companies. Well, how does that work? They're just saying that we're contracting in the private, even though we've registered that company with some sort of overseer. Okay? That's what private means. It's between two individuals and it's non-public. What does the word confidential mean? Well, confidential means to keep something safe. They're asking you to keep this private. They're asking you to keep it confidential. What is stopping you from putting private and confidential and strictly to be opened by the addressee only? What's stopping you from doing that? Nothing. What is stopping you from putting number 1 on your letter and then number 2 on your second correspondence, and on the third one, they are at fault? That's the enveloper side. When you open the letter, ask them questions like, what does Mr. mean in the front of my name? You have the right to ask that. You can ask, I don't particularly understand this particular word that you're using. Can you tell me where you've taken that word from? Is it true, Mr. Director, John, whoever it is it true that you have to give me a letter in any language that I ask for that I can understand so I can comprehend the letter? Learn to ask questions like barristers. Go on YouTube and punch in how barristers ask questions. They always start by saying, is it true, Mr. John? Is it true? Learn to do these things. Is it true that you have to show me your qualifications on a demand? The other element is start reading all of your letters from bottom up. I'll say it again, from bottom up, not from the top down. All governments, including their websites, all the relevant information is at the bottom. And you will see it at the bottom. It says, you may owe us. You may be obligated. They will use all of these very philosophical words. Now, I'm a Chief Federal Postal Court Judge, and it is my duty to educate you folks on language fraud, and it is my duty to educate you folks as the best I can to keep you financially healthy and to be able to keep you mentally sane, as it were, from these agencies harassing you. And I teach these things on a regular basis. Do not be disadvantaged with these collection agencies, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to feel powerful. If you have benefited from this video presentation, do your friend a favor share it with them. Share it with many people as you can, because the more educated people get, the more powerful they become. And the more powerful they become, the less power these third-party interlopers will have in your lives. Take your power back, ladies and gentlemen, and live in freedom. Thank you.